Alright, this is Mr. Gillum, and today we're going to look at the independent practice in your guide and instruction book. The independent practice is supposed to be completed by the student, and then this is like the answer key or the last minute study session leading into the quiz. So if you haven't completed your independent practice yet, make sure you're doing that before you're watching this video. The first question says that Jason's father bought a computer for $800. He made equal payments of 25% of the total cost. How much was each payment? Okay, so there's a lot of ways we can attack this problem. When I see the percent stuff, I think immediately of double number line, dividing it into 10% increments. That's one strategy that we've used. We've also talked about how to use an expression to solve this problem. So I'm going to do this problem both ways, and we're going to start with the number line. It takes a little bit longer, but it's a visual and it's usually pretty helpful. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and let's go 0%, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 there, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 there, okay. And obviously each of those lines represents 10% more. On the top we're going to talk about the total cost, and on the bottom we're going to talk about percent. Now I know that his computer cost $800 altogether. The whole cost was $800. So the whole cost was $800. Then I know that's 100% of the cost. I'm going to put 800 on this end of the diagram or the model, and it says that he made equal payments of 25% of the total cost. How much was each payment? So when I think of the number 25, I think of money all the time. I think of quarters, and that makes it easy for me to count by 25s. I know there are 4 quarters in a dollar, and so if I divide 100% in half, that makes 50, and if I divide 50 in half, that makes 25%. That's one way we could do it, or we could find each 10% increment and find halfway between the 20% and 30% mark, because 25 is halfway between 20 and 30. So either way you'd like to do it is fine. I'm going to start by taking half of 800 because half of 100% is 50%. So now half of 800 would be 400. I know that 25% is half of 50%, so I know that 25% would be half of 400. It would be somewhere in here. It would be half of 400 because I know 50% divided by 2 would be 25%. So 400 divided by 2 would be 200. And so that's one way we could have had the answer. Another way we could have found the answer is if we would have started with 10% increments. So I could have started with 100 and said, okay, well, if I divide that by 10, then that would be 10%. And if I divide 800 by 10, that would be 80. So I know 10% is 80, 20% would be 160, 30% would be 240. 25% is halfway in between 160 and 240, so $200 would be fine there. I could avoid this number line altogether if I wanted to talk about this in expression. It says he made equal payments of 25% of the total cost. 25% of the total. We actually know the total, $800. So what I'm really thinking is, what is 25% of $800? When I say that, I'm saying it like this. What is 25% of $800? And so when I think about this, this statement, I think about it as numbers and symbols, not as words. I think about, okay, percent means per 100, so 25 per 100. Of indicates multiplication, and then 800 the number. When I multiply straight across, or I can cross reduce. I prefer to cross reduce, but a lot of times students aren't familiar with that. 25 times 8 is 200. I know that because I count with quarters a lot. And then there are 2 extra zeros that I need to put on the end. So 20,000 over 100, and then I can reduce the zeros out later. And again, that gives me 200. $200, which is how much each payment would be made. Okay, so there's a lot of different ways you could do this problem. If I wanted to cross reduce, I could do it like this. For those of you out there that like to cross reduce, I could reduce there, and then I don't have big numbers later on to reduce. 25 times 8 is also 200. Okay, so that's the first one. Lots of ways you could solve this one using all the methods that we've talked about. Number 2 says that Antonio has read 147 pages of a book. He has completed 70% of the book. How many more pages does he need to read to finish the book? Okay, so In this case, the expression is going to be tough to do because we don't have the total. We're not trying to find the percent of a total. We have the percent that matches the progress that he's made through his book. So let's start with another diagram here. And on the diagram, we're going to say the bottom part is percent from 0 to 100. 100 being the entire thing, the entire book. And on the top, we'll talk about pages. Okay. It says that he read 147 pages of book. Okay. It doesn't say he read the whole 147 page book. It says that he read 147 pages of the book. He's completed 70% so far. So let's see here, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. Okay. So 70% is right here, this number. And it says that 70% of the book is 147 pages. How many more pages does he need to read to finish the book? So I guess we could use an expression on this. I didn't think about this. So we'll talk about that in a second. For now, I need to know how many pages there are from here to the end. And so if 70% is done from here to here, I need to know what 30% of the pages are. So I could do this a lot of different ways. I could say, okay, well, if I know that 70% is 147, if I divide that by 10, I can figure out what 10% is. If I divide that by 7, that would make 10%. And that would help me to figure out how much 10% is. We would need 3 10%. So I'm going to divide by 7. That would be 147 divided by 7. So when I do that, it looks to me like I have 21. So 10% is 21. So each 10% is 21, 21, 21, 21, 21, 21 more than the last number. So if I think of it like that, I can say, oh, well, 70% done is 147. I have 3 more 10% left before I am up to 100% of the book, or the book is completed. So I know that 21 plus 21 plus 21 is 63. So I know 63 pages. Looking at the next problem, it says, during the basketball season, Corey made 21 of the 60 baskets she attempted. Krista made 16 of the 40 baskets she attempted. Paula made 17 of the 50 baskets she attempted. Write the names of the players in order from the least percentage of baskets made to the greatest percentage of baskets made. Now the answer will be Paula, Corey, Krista. And I just left that on here because you need to know whether you got your answer right or not. But let's analyze the problem piece by piece. It says that Corey made 21 of the 60 baskets that she attempted. We're going to do Corey stuff in green. Krista made 16 of the 40 baskets she attempted. And Paula made 17 of the 50 baskets that she attempted. Actually, I'm going to incorporate unit rates into this problem, I think, to help me solve it. So let's talk about Corey first. She's the first one in the problem. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to make this into equivalent fractions. So we're going to talk about Corey first, and I'm going to use a double number line here for Corey, and I'm not sure how far I'm going to have to go because I want each of the fractions to be compared with the same denominator. So I'm going to start with 21 over 60. And I know that there are a lot of equivalent fractions to 21 over 60. So I'm going to go ahead and double it each time. There's 120. Not double it, sorry. I'm going to add another 60 on. I'm going to follow the plus 60 pattern and the plus 21 pattern. 42. I'm going to say 180, 240, 300, 360, 420, 480, 540, and 600. I hope that's going to be far enough. I have a feeling that it will be. And I'm going to go ahead and add. So I followed the plus 60 pattern on the bottom. I'm going to follow the plus 21 pattern on the top. 63, 84, 105, 126, 147, 168, 189, and 210. Okay, and I'm going to do the same kind of thing for Krista. and her pattern. In this case, Krista made 16 of the 40. And so for the equivalent fraction, I'm going to start with a plus 40. I'm going to need that many plus 40s actually. So 80, 120, 160, 100, 40, 280, 320, 360, 400, 440, 480, 520, 560, 600. And on the top, I'm going to follow the plus 16 pattern. 32, 48, 64, 80, 96. Let's see here, 112, 128, 144. Let's see here, that'd be 160, 176, 192, 208. 16 more than that would be 224 and 240. Okay, and then of course we have to do, on top of that, we have to do Paula. Can't leave out Paula, or she's important too, and we need to figure out all of them and compare each of them. So for Paula, what color did we use? I think we used black, okay, for Paula. And she made 17 of the 50, so Paula. Not 75, 17. Sorry about that. 17 out of the 50. And so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so I'm going to say 50, 100, 150, 200, 250, 300, 350, 400, 450, 500, 550, 600. And I'm going to follow the plus 17 pattern. This is going to be a challenge a little bit more. 34, 51, 68, 85. Let's see here, 102, 119. 17 more than that would be 136. 17 more than that would be 153, 170, 187, and then 204. Okay, and so, man, that seemed like a lot of work, but I'm going to show you that you could eventually find the answer using the following. We use red marker for this, the following values. If you look at the equivalent fractions, you'll notice that all the way at 600, they finally are compared to the same value. Corey made 210 out of 600. Krista made 240 out of 600, if we're talking about equivalent ratios, and Paula would have made 204 out of 600. So if we're talking about percent from least to greatest, Paula would make the least percent because it's the smallest amount per 600. So she would be the smallest. Corey only made 210, so she would be the next smallest. And Krista would have made 240, so she would have been the greatest. The other way that you could solve this problem would be like this. Do it up here at the top. If you think of each of the fractions, 21 out of 60, 16 out of 40, and 17 out of 50. The percentage can be quickly calculated if you use division. If you think of this as 21 divided by 60, and this as 16 divided by 40, oops. (16 divided by 40). Oops, did the same thing twice. And 17 divided by 50. We can find the decimal values for each of those. When we divide 21 divided by 60, that equals 0.35. 16 divided by 40 is 0.40, and 17 divided by 50 is 0.34. As percents, I would just say, oh, well, that means per 100. So if I multiply that by 100 or move the decimal place twice, this would represent 35%. This would represent 40%, and this would represent 34%. And we could order them by percent, doing that as well without using this entire huge number line process. Okay? So 2 ways you could solve that one too. Hopefully your numbers aren't that quite that big when you're doing your independent practice or your quiz.